This is going to sound like so much hate, and I swear it's not. Welcome back to the Warner Brothers podcast. I'm Kyle, joined as always by my brother Keenan, by Tim Gray. You know it's football time. If you're joining us, this is part 2 of our AFC preview. We did the East and the West last night, and it's the North and the South tonight. Fellas, how you doing?
Ready now.
I love it.
I couldn't be more excited. For this.
Listen,
it's just knowing we're close. I'm ready.
Tim, how you doing?
Doing great. Every day we get one step closer to Thursday night football. So officially 1 week away right now. Ready for it.
We are officially 1 week away, and by the time we finish this episode, Keenan's singing Neo for some reason, which is a step up from the Miley Cyrus he was singing pre-show. So we'll take it.
Yeah, we're feeling good today.
We were actually discussing Keenan has a tendency to have legendary DJ sets, which could go from you might get Dipset, you might get Miley Cyrus, as aforementioned, you might get Green Day. You just never know what you're gonna get in a Keenan.
You can go
DJ
from
set.
grinding to Holiday, like it's not, and not Holiday and Chingy. I mean Holiday by Green Day. So
forgot that was in the song.
Are we chilling at the Holiday? Okay.
I have good news. I have good news for you guys, though. As Tim just said, we're 7 days away. By the time we're done this episode, we might be 6 days away. So we're just inching that much closer. Just by the hour, we're getting that much closer. So I can't wait.
Absolutely. And without further ado, though, we're going to get into the AFC South. If you haven't seen the first video, go back and watch that first video to get the AFC East and the AFC West predictions. We went through team by team. We gave every team some justice. We'll do the same here. So if you like a certain team, obviously your favorite team will be talked about. Hopefully we don't say bad things for your sake. But we're going to pick a team. We're going to start off with the Houston Texans because we're going to go from top of the division to bottom of the division. We're going to give our takes on it, each of us, and then we're going to continue to go through teams. So, Timmy, start us off again like you did last night. Houston Texans. Where do you think they'll be? What's their record, and why do we got them there?
I think we've hinted at this before on previous podcasts. This team is just full of expectations. This is like everybody's dark horse Super Bowl team. They can't even be a dark horse anymore. So many people got bets on this team to win a Super Bowl. I just think they're gonna come out a little bit flat. I think they're gonna let a lot of people down. I think a lot of people are just expecting them to just dominate this division and finish around like 11 or 12 wins. I don't see that happening. I have them at 10-7, still winning the division at 10-7. I just think for this team to be a 12-win team, we need MVP CJ Stroud, and I just don't think that that's in the cards. I think they're loaded on offense with talent. They've got players at every single position. It's just at some point there is too many mouths to feed, and we've definitely seen Stephon get a little upset and get a little noisy when he's not getting the targets that he wants. So I could see that being an issue going down the stretch.
Kyle, how about you?
I agree with Tim in the sense that how we got to 10-7, they do have a tough schedule, which you expect. They got a first-place schedule. This team does have a bevy of predictions of – what's the word I'm looking for here? Why am I skipping? They got a bunch of pressure on them to come out big. Like Tim said, like a lot of people have expectations for this team. A lot of people have, like you said, Super Bowl expectations for this team. Reasonably so, though. I mean, they got a defensive coach. They've got a good defensive squad, and they really have everything you want out of a contender. Other than that, they're young. And you could say that C.J. Stroud could hit a sophomore slump here. And that might be true, but I think they have enough talent to overcome that. And they have enough soft spots in their schedule to overcome that as well. So I agree with 10-7. I agree with them winning the division. I could see them even going 11-6. But everything, all the concerns you have, I don't think it's going to really matter. They have so much talent. If Diggs really did give them problems, they could cut him immediately. He's kind of like their third receiver. So, you know, if he has problems, that's on him, really. I mean, it's not his last chance, but I mean, he's not a number one guy anymore. I don't think so. I don't foresee that being an issue. Again, if it is, just cut the guy. But they have so much talent. You really just got to depend on C.J. Stroud doing his thing, and there's no reason for us to think he's really going to hit a true wall, right? I don't expect to see games with multiple games of 3 picks or anything like that. So I don't have super high expectations as far as I don't know what my playoff picture looks like yet. I'll say that, but I expect them to win the division. I expect them to take care of business. They do have a tougher division than most. They got the Colts there. They got the Jags there. However you feel about the Titans. And again, that first place schedule. But overall, I think they're going to be fine.
What do you have them at exactly? I know you said 10 or 11. What do you have them at exactly?
I would lean 10-7. I'll give you a final one after I hear your prediction. I would lean 10-7 though, just because of their schedule. But I do think their upside gives you could get 12 wins out of them. You could get 12 wins. I mean, we talk about a sophomore slump with CJ. What if he takes the leap? We've seen this with Russell Wilson in his second year with a loaded team. And I think he's farther along as far as a passer goes than Russ was. And what's not to like about the defense? I just like, and D'Amico Ryans as a coach, there's not much you can really poke holes in other than, okay, if CJ takes a step back, then sure. But I don't see him taking a step back. Maybe some rough patches, but they have enough talent to overcome even a couple bad games of CJ.
So I'm a little higher on this team than you guys are. I have them at 11-6, so it's not like I'm much higher on them record wise, but I'm much higher on them than you guys are, like by the way you're sounding. So I think that this team, defensively, you've got Danielle Hunter now to go along with Will Anderson, who is really coming into his own at the end of the year. Derek Stinling Jr., who got at cornerback. Jimmy Ward, Jalen Petrie. So you've got defensive players across the board. Plus, you also have D'Amico Ryan. So defensively, I think that they're going to be. Last year, they were opportunistic, especially in the game that we saw in the playoff games. So they're an opportunistic defense. I think they have the capabilities of being top 15-ish to top 10-ish. And with that offense and what they have, they're going to be all set. Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, backed up by Damian Pierce. You obviously have one of the best left tackles in the league in Laramie Tunsil, Tyson Howard, Shaq Mason. So the line's gotten better over the years. They don't have a phenomenal line, but they do have a good line. Plus, you have a good left tackle. And so with C.J. Stroud, I know that's really the big question mark. Is he going to take that leap? I mean, Patrick Mahomes in his year 2, he won MVP. That was 50 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson in his second year, he was 36 touchdowns to 6 picks. He was a unanimous MVP. We have seen this from quarterbacks in their second year. Typically, the third year, for the most part, is that year where they hit more of a slump. They learn the game, but I mean, obviously, it depends on each quarterback. But we've seen second-year quarterbacks in their second year take off and really make themselves MVP caliber players in top 5, top 10 quarterbacks, which CJ Stroud's already put himself in that conversation. Obviously, they got Stephon Diggs and bolstered that offense. We've seen when you add that big play wide receiver, I mean, if Stephon Diggs still has that kind of level in him, we don't know if it was more so his body a little bit betraying him or if it really was just him and Josh Allen not on the same page last year. We'll see. But obviously, we saw when Stephon Diggs went to the Bills, Josh Allen had his best season. Jalen Hurts gets A.J. Brown. He gets his best season. You add that in, obviously, with Tank Dell and Nico Collins, especially Tank Dell, who was taking the top off the defense last year. I really like this Texans team, 11-6. I think that they have a good chance to get to an AFC championship game. Obviously, getting to a Super Bowl is extremely tough. You have Mahomes, you have Burrow, you have Lamar, you've got Josh. And then from there, you even have, like in your own division, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who we'll talk about here soon, the Colts, depending on how you feel about Anthony Richardson. And I mean, I can keep going on. Obviously, the Dolphins, Aaron Rodgers, and the Jets. So it's very tough. We'll talk about the playoffs here. But I've got the Texans 11-6, and I think that they are very poised to make an AFC championship run. Whether they do or not, I will let you guys know probably in about 5 days.
Yeah, I mean, to respond to that, I don't think you're any higher than me on this team necessarily. I think we're kind of in line. It's just a schedule thing with them. I mean, theirs kind of works out to where it's like 2 hard games, 2 easy games. You know what I mean? They've got a weird schedule where they don't really hit a soft stretch. I said they did in my first part, but I just looked at it. It's really like soft, then a couple harder games, then a couple easier games. You get the Pats in there. And it really honestly depends on how that division shakes out, especially with Anthony Richardson. I mean, we'll talk about the Colts here in a sec, but there was things we liked about that team. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to spoil what I think about the Colts, but look, Anthony Richardson, he didn't play. What did he play? 4 games? Did he even?
I think he
Two.
played 2. He got
Two.
injured in the second one. He was playing, and he was playing very well running the ball wise.
Yeah.
It was really throwing where the question marks were.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, those Colts game could really not make or break their season, but make or break their record and where they stand.
They almost did last year.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
They
were in that.
made or break their season last year.
They were in that divisional game, and the Colts have a tough schedule themselves. So again, going back to Anthony Richardson, we liked what we saw, but it was only 2 games. So, I mean, it's hard to say he's going to progress, right? We don't really know. Mm-hmm. So if he has rough games, which we expect, because it's essentially going to be a rookie season, that could very well make or break the Texans season with the Jags there, because the Jags are going to be somewhat tough at least. Again, we'll talk about those 2 teams later, but again, with Diggs, he's a luxury for them. He's really a luxury. If he can accept being that third guy, it should be A-okay for them, because it's just going to be weapons for CJ. He's going to be able to be protected. And then, if they can hold on to the ball, I mean, they got Joe Mixon too. They can run the ball and really just keep, the clock game going, make it easy for him. If you get up 10 and then you can just sit on the ball and then, rush the passer on defense, that's going to make it very easy for the Texans, even against these good quality teams. So there is a world where this is a 13-win team. But I do think because of the schedule being tough, because of CJ being young, that they get closer to 10-11. But there is a world where this is a 13-win team.
This team feels a little reminiscent, not on the way their season will go probably, because this team has more expectations coming in, but this team feels a little kind of like the Bengals did a few years back when they made it to the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously you had Joe Burrow. They didn't have the line that this team does, because obviously you have Laramie Tunsil, but you've got Jamar Chase, you have T. Higgins, you got Tyler Boyd, you both have Joe Mixon, and then defensively, it's not the greatest defense in the world, but both teams are really opportunistic. You had Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard on the outside who were getting to the quarterback at a high rate, and then you had linebackers in secondary. Jesse Bates was making big plays for them, so it's kind of not the exact same makeup, but it's a team that has a lot of offensive firepower, defense they can play solid enough, and they both got a good coach. Zach Taylor, offensive-minded, D'Amico Ryans, defensive-minded. But Timmy, I don't know if you had any other thoughts. Okay.
I do have a question. I have a question for both of you
on.
guys. Let's just say this works out as well as it could. All right, I don't want to spoil any playoff predictions here, but let's say it goes as well as it could. They get to a 12-13 win season. All right, they're the 1 seed. Let's say hypothetically, AFC, they're the 1 seed. Chiefs come to them in the AFC Championship game. Who are you picking in that game? Texas at home.
I would have to see how the Chiefs are looking throughout the year at this moment in time. It'd be really hard for me to see an unproven fully quarterback go there and beat Mahomes. But at the same time, if you're telling me that the Texans are a 13-win team with the number 1 seed, CJ Stroud might be the MVP. So I might feel differently at that point. Right this moment, I would feel Chiefs. I'd have to see how the season plays out prior to making that pick.
I think I would just take the Chiefs just based on dynasty.
That's fair.
I mean, it's hard to bet against them. I don't want them to win necessarily, but they're just so many veterans. They know what to do to win.
Yeah.
And we've seen that before where a team takes a leap in the second year and they secure a 1 or 2 seed, and then the playoffs come and they kind of just get punched in the mouth. So it wouldn't shock me. Kind of reminiscent of the Green Bay Packers. So many times they were a 13-4 team, and then they get to the playoffs in the first
Baltimore.
round. Yeah, Baltimore.
When Lamar won his MVP in the second year, obviously they got the bye. They played the Tennessee Titans, and they just got kind of beat up by the Titans.
A couple more questions. Do you guys put any stock in their loss to Baltimore last year? Do you just chalk that up to being a young team, or do you chalk that up to, maybe the lights being a little too bright for them?
A little bit of both. They were in the game in the first half. The second half just got away from them. Mm-hmm. So they played a good enough game halfway through, and then third quarter just, like I said, got away. I would definitely say I would chalk that up to just being a young team, especially as like a first year head coach. The lights were a little too bright for them, and they just couldn't live up to it. But
I would put that more on the good Ravens. I think that you had, I mean, obviously they were in a situation they'd never been before. And so you're learning, you're coming off of a playoff win, you go into a very tough environment with a team that had a lot of expectations on them. Obviously, it was like, okay, Burrow, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes. You only have to face one of them, not two, because they're clearly playing each other in the second round. Whoever wins, they're coming to you. So it's like the last time you were the one seed. We know what happened when you were obviously with the Titans. You just lost. I just mentioned that Lamar Jackson's been injured, so all of that comes together. And Lamar had never had a legitimately great playoff game to that point, so it had a lot of pressure on him. And in that second half, he showed why he's an MVP. He showed why he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league, and he really took over that game. So I think it was a little bit more of Lamar Jackson really just grabbing it. But at the same time, the Texans did kind of look a little overmatched, and that might have been the fact that the Ravens defense last year was one of the best defenses we've seen in the last few years. So
True. I mean, yeah, it was Lamar's best playoff game. So, I mean, it was kind of the perfect storm of things. And I think I say we as football fans as a whole, I think we had expectations of CJ Stroud and the Texans in that game after the first round game and as well as their season, obviously. I mean, Stroud just looked good the whole season. Tim, follow up question. You do think Stroud's coming back to earth a little bit this season? Describe more in detail what that looks like. Do you think he has like legitimately like terrible games, like 4-pick games? Like, how do you think this season looks for him?
I don't think he's going to have bad games per se. Like, I think he'll have his average games where he might throw a pick. Last year, he was incredibly efficient, didn't throw many picks, didn't have any of those games where you were like, damn, he's a rookie.
Right.
You never saw those games. I just think from a touchdown standpoint, he's not going to be a 3 touchdown per game guy. He's going to be, a 1 touchdown, and then some games are going to be 1 touchdown and a pick, or 2 touchdowns and a pick, or 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. It's just not going to be what we see from like a typical MVP where they're like just pouring in touchdowns. I think this offense can average 20 something points a game, and that's good enough to win 11 games. But I just don't think it's all going to come from CJ. I think they're still going to run pretty well, and we're just not going to get a top end team. So I do think he's going to be good, and I think he's probably going to be better than he was last year. I just don't want to put him into any MVP category or anything like that.
Got you.
I think the best thing for the Texans if he plays exactly like he did last season.
Sure.
23 touchdowns, 5 picks, a little bit over 100 quarterback rating, and it was just essentially take the shots when they're there, make the accurate throws, don't turn the ball over. And like not like he was a game manager because he did stretch the ball down the field, but play like he did last year. He also did miss, I think, 2 games, if not just 1. But
it was like 1.5. He got
it was
injured
like 1.5. Yeah, it was like
and
1.5 games. So like he could probably end this year 30 touchdowns, 7 picks,
That's what I was thinking.
600 yards.
Increase the touchdowns to the 28 to 32 range, and then increase the picks up to like 10 at the most. He's not going to be a crazy guy turning the ball over all the time, but he's definitely not going to throw 5 picks. I don't think.
31 to 7. Really, still a really good rate, and I think that he did. That's all he needs to do.
Hey, we're going to find out a lot because they built this team as if they're ready for the Super Bowl. Like, they're ready for the expectations. So we'll find out very quickly if he's ready. I think we all agree, like, he's somewhat ready. Like, they're going to be a playoff team, so we're going to see very quickly.
They went all the way in for him, and that's how you do it. You get a rookie quarterback who he's on a rookie deal. Obviously, he was a true rookie, not like he was just like a second-year guy. So now you've got 3 years of him cheap. Get every piece you can and make a true run. See how good he can be, and then you get into that retool period of where, okay, like how Josh Allen is right now, where your team doesn't have the same kind of flexibility because you don't have the cap space for it, but how good your quarterback is should be able to propel you. Like we all have the Bills in the playoffs. Timmy and I both have the Bills winning the division. Kyle has them at, I believe, 10-7. So we all still have faith in them, and that's a lot to do with Josh Allen and his greatness. All right. We talked about him a little bit. Kyle was kind of alluding to a little bit of Anthony Richardson there. The Colts would be the second team. I think technically the third. We're going to go into the Colts. They're going to just go into the Colts. Timmy, what do you think about the Colts?
I think the Colts are in a similar situation to the Texans. I think from what we saw out of Anthony Richardson, we saw some good. I think we saw a good amount of bad as well.
Mm-hmm.
He runs a lot. Like, he doesn't stay in the pocket. If he can run, he's going to take off, and that's good for fantasy football. That's not always good for NFL football. Um, so I think that can be kind of like an Achilles heel for this team if he's just scrambling all the time. But I can totally see a world where he's just Cam Newton again, and he just leads this team to potentially a division win, and they're a double-digit win team. I have them at 9-8. Sorry, I have them at 8-9. I think they're going to be competitive in a lot of games. The defense doesn't scare me really at all. They only have a couple pieces. And then offensively, it's just Jonathan Taylor, Pittman, and Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson will be a solid quarterback, but I think a lot of people are thinking that he's the next Cam Newton, and I'm not going to put him there. Not right now, at least. So I think they're a good competitive team.
Tim,
Your thoughts?
I gotta say this, Tim. Aside from the Raiders, me and you were quite in line with a lot of this because I have the same feel for the Colts. Honestly, I mean, I might have a different feel on them if Richardson played more than 2 games. I expect all the like rookie hits, like all the rookie wall stuff that would have hit him last year. I expect that to be this year for him. You know what I mean? Because he just didn't get the reps last year at all. So these tough defenses he's gonna face, he's gonna look probably terrible. Like when push comes to shove, when he's really gotta, down 10, down 14, you really gotta throw the ball. It could look ugly, right? When they're up and it's a ball control offense, which I expect it to be. It's gonna look a lot like how Philly did with Jalen Hurts when they just want to control the ball, control the clock, that type of thing. It'll probably look great. It'll look even better than great because of how explosive he can be. Like Tim said, he's Cam Newton light to some degree. So, but we don't know. I mean, we don't know what his offseason looked like. Maybe he progressed as a passer. Maybe he'll surprise us. And if that's the case, all bets are off. But I expect some rough games. I expect some rough patches. I've got them at 7-10. I think they'll be very competitive. I think they'll steal a couple divisional games, maybe even from the Texans. Not that week 1 game, but maybe later on. But I don't know. I expect some hiccups from Anthony Richardson, but I expect some flashes from Anthony Richardson too. There's going to be days where he just puts some insane stat lines up. So great for fantasy. In our league, I drafted him as my QB for that reason, but there's going to be some extremely ugly games along the way as well. So 7-10 for the Colts. I think it'll be an exciting season. I think it'll be a competitive season, much like last season, even with Gardner Minshew. But ultimately, I don't see them having a winning record.
So
I saw. Sorry, I don't mean to.
No, you're good. You're good. No, you.
I saw a fun stat. How many games post high school do you think Anthony Richardson has played in his life? I'm not sure if I have it right, but I know I have it within like 2 games. So
31.
If you want to take a guess, Kyle, go right ahead.
The way you presented that, I'm going to say something like 25.
It's like 15 games. He played 1 season at Florida, and he played 2 NFL games, and that is it. He has, if you count the preseason games, he was in these preseason games. The preseason offense, they looked terrible. They couldn't complete. There looked like there was some accuracy issues, not on the same page for a couple things. So it is crazy to think that people are putting Anthony Richardson into this category of he could take this leap and be Cam Newton when we've only seen him play a dozen games post high school, which
could be more Trey Lance than Cam Newton.
Exactly.
So I think that this team is going to look pretty similar to last year. I have them currently at 9-8, but I understand why you have Kyle 7-10. I understand, Timmy, why you have 8-9. I think their max is 10. I think their bottom is 6. I think between that, I think is perfectly fine. So the thing about the Colts that's interesting is, like, Kyle was talking yesterday about the Jets, and he was saying how he feels great about the Jets because of their schedule, and he feels they get some of the tougher teams the Ravens, the 49ers at the best time to get those teams. And between there, schedule-wise, they have some light games. It's the exact opposite for the Colts. They end the season super light. It's can you get to that point aroundish 500? Because it's Houston, their start of the season. Houston, Green Bay, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville. So that's a tough 5 for any quarterback to come out and just pretty much have his first 5 games. Because obviously he's played a game and a half. And then it's Tennessee, Miami, Houston, Minnesota, Buffalo. So you have a couple games that are winnable. The end of the season after they play New York and Detroit, they have New England, Denver, Tennessee, the Giants, and then Jacksonville. So they end the season pretty light. Obviously, they have Jacksonville and Tennessee division games, so it could be a little bit tougher. I think the Tennessee Titans are frisky. We'll talk about them here soon. But so they end the season nice. If you can get to that point in week 12, 5 and like if you could get to 5 and 7 ish, you could get to that point where 9 and 8, 8 and 9 is looking there, and you can compete at the end for the division, kind of like the Chargers like to go in that late season run back in the day with Phillip Rivers. But Anthony Richardson's going to show you flashes. He's going to have these games where he's okay. Cam Newton prototype, but I don't think you put Cam Newton on him yet, especially Pete Cam. I think people underrate Pete Cam a little bit, but I think this team looks pretty similar to last year.
My thing with that is those last 5 games are super easy, but man, those other 12 are just tough. And
absolutely. Can you get to that? Can you get to that even in a position to where you can make a playoff push?
Yeah.
And for a young quarterback coming in and having to play those defenses and those teams.
And that's my thing. That's why I wish we would have saw more of Anthony Richardson, because we could definitively say, okay, he can do this against this defense. He can do that against that defense. But he played so little that, you almost have to factor in, all right, 3 of these games he's going to play like trash. 3 of these games he's going to, make these dumb rookie mistakes. That's where I just lean more towards 7, but they're so well coached. And that run game could be extremely effective. If they don't have to have them pass that much, okay, then you've got potential here. But that schedule is so tough at the front half, or really the entire thing, but those last 5, like you said. So they almost have to like punch above their weight, especially Anthony Richardson. I mean, I forget which one of you described C.J. Stroud as the question mark. Anthony Richardson's a true question mark here as far as their team goes. He will truly make or break their season. They do have Joe Flacco, the God, in case he does get injured. So, I mean, if we get Flacco week 7, they might just run the table after what we saw last year. So who knows? So, but
Flacco.
if it's just Anthony Richardson, I have huge questions. But that's the great thing about the NFL season. We get them all answered. So unless he gets injured week 2 again.
Absolutely. So Jacksonville. Timmy, how do you feel about the Jacksonville Jaguars this year?
Every year we see.
Tim's been trying not to laugh for like the last like 2.5 minutes. Tim's just had like a smirk.
I've been muted the whole time, just holding it in. So every year we see teams go from worst to best. We see teams fall off. The Jaguars are actually a team that I think is going to fall off this year. I do not like the contract that they gave Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he earned any dollar of it. Like, I would have let him play out this year, and then I would have evaluated after this year instead of making him the highest paid quarterback in the league. There's that graphic that always resurfaces every single year on a total yards and touchdowns and interceptions and wins. Trevor Lawrence is Daniel Jones. They're the same quarterback, just interswapped. And one of them's at $40 million, the other one's at $55. So I don't love it. I think they do have a pretty mid-tough schedule. I know the strength of schedule that they use it's kind of subjective because it's based on last year's data. Those teams that are going to get better obviously aren't factored in. Like the Jets are a terrible team, but if they are a good team this year, obviously they skew that data pretty bad. So I think they have a tough stretch, and I think that they're going to lose quite a bit of one-score games, and I just don't think things are going to go their way. So I have them 5-12, right at the bottom of this division.
Damn.
and I think they are going to fire. Sorry, I'm blanking on
Doug
his
Peterson.
name now.
Doug
Doug
Peterson.
Peterson. Um, I think he was on the hot seat low key last year, and I think if
That he
this
was.
happens, he's gone. So I
Oh,
think
if this happens, he might not make it to week 17.
That's what I was going
I
to
don't
ask.
think he waits.
Is he getting fired mid-season or after the season?
It really depends on how it goes. Probably
That might be a
mid-season.
that might be a bold prediction. We can hold on.
I've got a couple other better bold predictions, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to keep this one here as just a prediction. I just don't like being the chalk picker. Like there's always a few teams that surprise us either in a negative way or in a positive way. You got to pick them. I picked the Raiders as one of my positive teams. I'm picking the Jags as one of my negative teams. They have honestly disappointed me every year that Trevor Lawrence has been there. The first year, I guess you could say, was okay. It was a promising year. And then they win the division and they do nothing in the playoffs. They actually had like that. Oh no, they beat the Chargers in the playoffs. So that was their highlight.
Trevor Lawrence threw 4 picks in the first half, and then had the fumble, and then he threw 4 touchdowns in the second half, and
that is their highlight. And then I just haven't been impressed by this team.
Brandon Staley.
We've said this so many times with Trevor Lawrence. We were sold Peyton Manning. We were sold this generational talent that is absolutely going to bring a Super Bowl to Jacksonville.
And we've gotten Eli minus.
We've gotten worse than Eli. We've gotten not Eli. Eli at least had some success playoffs wise. We've gotten 1 win and 3 trips to the playoffs. And last year, with the season on the line, they couldn't beat a 5-12 team. They decided
they've 1 trip to the playoffs. Only on once. They only went that 1 year because remember week 17.
Urban Meyer.
Week 7. It was Urban Meyer his first year. The second year they got there, and then it was 2 years in a row where they choked at the end of the season.
Yeah,
because they lost to, I think, the Titans week 17 or week 18. And
I think
last year, instead of trying,
I think you're confusing that with the Colts. I think this is only his 4th year for Trevor Lawrence, right?
Okay.
I think this is your 4th. I think you're right, though. I think they coughed it up last year before they made it, year before that. Right?
Yes, year 4. Yeah, I was making it up with the Carson Wentz and the Colts.
I got you.
But that tells you all you need to know, though. That if Keen, you confuse that with him, I mean, that tells you all you need to know about Trevor Lawrence right there. If you confuse it with Carson Wentz,
Wentz,
they had everything
backup QB
lined up for them. Yeah, exactly. Keep going, Tim. Keep going.
Last year, with the season on the line, all they had to do was win and in against the Tennessee Titans, a team that couldn't beat most teams. I think they finished with 5 wins last year. They decided to try to get Evan Ingram the single-season tight end reception record instead of win the football game. He had 14 targets in that game. Why? You tell me. They didn't put the season on, they didn't have that as their priority. That blows my mind. I think halfway through the season, week 7 or 8, this team is bad. They got 1 or 2 wins. Peterson's gone. And it's going to look like a really bad offseason for them because they got a lot of money tied up in a few players. So that's my take. They're my dog this year.
All right, Kyle, you go.
Tim, I couldn't agree with you more as far as Trevor Lawrence, but more so as far as Doug Peterson goes. I sincerely, with all my heart, hope this is his last season. You guys have heard me talk about Trevor Lawrence, and it's really everything Tim just said. I'd almost rather him look bad in some of these spots. And it's not even that he looks bad. It's that he looks fucking generic. Like he has no just oomph to him. Like these Josh Allen.
Looks like William.
Looks,
his first name.
Yeah, looks like William Lawrence more than
looks
Trevor
like
Lawrence.
Bill Lawrence.
Yeah, Bill Lawrence, exactly. Just like Tim said, we got sold all these expectations and we haven't got it. And it seems like a lot of your national media will still just put him at top 10. That's why I'm so high on Herbert compared to him, because at least Herbert, we've seen him do smart things, have a strong arm, be mobile, right? I'd like to
40
see
touchdowns.
Throw touchdowns, yeah, exactly. I'd like to see him have a little more oomph to him too, like maybe Josh Allen. But, Trevor Lawrence, sometimes you don't see it. Sometimes you do see it, though. But I can't agree. This has to be Doug Peterson's last season. I don't know why they didn't fire him last year. You put Vrabel on this team, and this is a 11-12 win team instantly, in my opinion.
Put Bill Belichick on this team.
Put Bill Belichick on this team. Bill Belichick in Jacksonville would be like the ultimate like retirement type thing. Like he's in Florida with all the other senior citizens in Jacksonville of all places.
He's just doing what Tom did.
He's coaching from home.
I'm gonna head straight to Florida, and we'll be chilling.
I mean, I really wish Brandon Petty was here so we could talk to him about this. This is his team, obviously, and we've had these discussions all offseason. It's really exactly what me and Tim are saying. All that being said, there's way too much talent here. I was ready to be on the Tim train here and pick them for 7 wins and to miss the playoffs. I actually have them contending for the division at 10 wins. Got them at 10-7 like the Texans. I think the Texans win the division. But hey, if this goes bad, it's going to be exactly what Tim said. It's going to be a 5, 6, 7 win team. Peterson's going to be out of there. I think he should be out of there anyway. I don't care if they make the playoffs or not. If they got to the playoffs, I don't think they would do anything. Let me give you Doug Peterson's career record outside of the Super Bowl season. We got 7-9 his first year in Philly, 13-3 in a Super Bowl the next year, 9-7, 9-7, 4-11, 9-8, 9-8, and that's with pretty good talent
Jason
around
Garrett.
him. Yeah, honestly, his career record's 60-53.
Jason Garrett with a Super Bowl.
60-53. I mean, he's just uninspiring. He's not a bad coach. I wouldn't say he's a bad coach, but I mean, it's just one of those things. I don't want to bring it up being a Patriots fan, but like every time it's mentioned, I'm like, how the fuck did we lose that game? Especially to Doug P. Like, he's just a generic ass coach. And we talked about
Malcolm Butler.
Yeah, Malcolm Butler among. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered really. I mean, honestly, like the way they threw the ball in that.
Brady literally was on pace for his greatest playoff run. He was 10 touchdowns, no picks. He threw for 505 and 3 touchdowns. And then Fletcher Cox has been, oh my God.
I just hope everybody appreciates the Patriot. I hope everybody appreciates the Patriot era for the endless entertainment we gave them. Not only did we dominate, but we also gave you some of the most entertaining Super Bowl losses with those 2 Giants losses and that fucking Eagles.
Yeah, we're better than the Chiefs because we just are more entertaining than the Chiefs. Don't get me wrong, the Chiefs are like a high flying team, whatever. But like, name a Patriots Super Bowl other than the second Rams one that was bad. They've been in 9. 8 of them were great.
Listen,
the
Cowboys thrive off drama, but nobody gave you more drama than that Pats dynasty.
The Patriots were football drama. The Cowboys were like half football drama and then half Jerry Jones. So it's like half and half.
It was more so ESPN and Skip. They
Stephen A. too.
Of course, Jerry too. But I mean, no, the Jags. I really wanted to go under on the Jags. They have way too much talent. I mean, I think we forget they were 8-3 last year. I talk about Doug Peterson, but they were 8-3 before the wheels fall off. And you can point to that. You can just say, hey, Kyle, the wheels fell off. I'm looking at that more. And I couldn't argue with you. I cannot argue with anything Tim said. I am in lockstep with him. Just the fact that they do have more talent and the fact that if it's ever going to happen with Trevor Lawrence, this is the year. Head coach, good head coach, bad head coach, whatever. It's got to happen this year. We got to see something to where we're like, okay, he's clearly being held back by Doug Peterson. Because you will, as Tim just made the case, you can make the case absolutely that Trevor Lawrence isn't holding up his end of the deal. I think he did get injured towards the end of the season in that Monday night game. You could say that hampered him, but man, they still should have stepped on Tennessee's neck, made the playoffs, and then we can have a fair conversation about him. But this is the conversation we have to have. And Keenan's getting him mixed up with Carson Wentz. That's where he's at in his career. So, yeah.
So generic Jaguars.
That's
what they are. Generic coach, generic everything about them. It's just not an over-the-top team. They can't. They don't.
But a ton of talent at positions you want them to have talent in. That's the weird part about it.
So I actually am close with Kyle. By close, I mean I have the same exact record as Kyle. I think they go 10-7 this year. I actually have them as a playoff team this season. I think they're going to be in the wild card. Obviously, I have the Texans at 11-6. But to your point, this is a make or break season. I don't see this season being 8-9. I see it being 6-11 or 10-7 and making the playoffs. It's like I don't see it. If it's going down, I think it goes bad, and if it's not, I think that they have a good season. And I'm going on the good side. They have some offensive weapons. Obviously, they have the big game against the Chief guy, Gabe Davis, to go along with Christian Kirk. I mean, obviously, they let Calvin Ridley go, but you do have ETN, so you have a running game you can lean on. Josh Allen was a monster on defense last year. So
Josh Hines.
They have some piece. You're right. My bad. But so
he should have done that.
But
early.
it really this whole division, as we've been talking about, comes down to how good can CJ Stroud be in his next year? How good can Anthony Richardson be? How good can Trevor Lawrence be?
Bill.
Can Trevor Lawrence be 85% of what the guy he was supposed to be? Because he's been 70 ish. Because he was, I mean, if you're supposed to be that great, like we're talking about Caleb right now, and I've seen more flashes from Caleb in the preseason than I have felt from Trevor. Like, I just look at Caleb, and regardless how you feel, he feels special. Now he's got to go prove it, but he just feels special. Trevor was supposed to give you that exact feel. Supposed to give you that Andrew Luck feel, and we saw it with Andrew Luck with a terrible offensive line, T.Y. Hilton, and then a defense that was solid, and he was able to take them to 11 wins in the playoffs, and just obviously they ran into the Patriots. But 10-7 for the Jags, got them there. If they don't, they are blowing it up. Trevor, they're keeping Trevor, and everything else around them pretty much is going to get in flux. But that's it. I don't really have any more on the Jags. I think we really covered them pretty well.
Career record for Trevor Lawrence outside of that first season is 17-16. So generic is exactly the
Eli. One. I'm telling you, he's Eli Manning without the Super Bowl run. Without
the turnovers though too. He's not wild with the turnovers.
He's not wild.
He protects the ball a little better, but still, I mean, this last season
he couldn't. No, but don't forget he had a fumble problem. He had like 7 fumbles last year. So like he had a super fumble problem.
So Eli, but instead of picks, it's fumbles. I mean, he had 14.
He had 3 fumbles and 5, then 5, and then yeah. So he just couldn't hold on to the football for a lot of the time. But anyways, let's get into my hometown team. I'm living in Tennessee, the Titans. Let's get to that hometown team. Timmy, what do you think about the Titans this year? I don't think we have too much, but what do you think about the Titans?
I think this is a team that is going to surprise people, not because they're going to be good. I just don't think they're going to be as bad as people think that they're going to be. I think a lot of people are just writing this team off immediately. Maybe you don't like Will Levis. I understand that. I think that there are some flaws with Will Levis. But I think that they've made a lot of offseason additions. I think their draft was pretty solid. I like Tony Pollard. Something came out at the end of last year basically saying that he wasn't even fully healthy the whole year, and it wasn't until like week 11 that he actually felt good. That would explain a lot because he didn't look very good. They got Calvin Ridley. They traded for L'Jarius Sneed. They got a lot of pieces coming to this team that weren't there last year. And if the offense looks a lot revamped, that's not just a run-first team, give the ball to Derrick Henry team, I think they can make some noise and mix some things up. So I don't think that they're going to be a bottom-tier team. I see a lot of people put them as like a number 1 pick contender. I don't think that's the case. I have them at 6-10 or 6-11. Sorry. So not good, but I actually have them 3rd in the division, better than the Jaguars. So.
Yeah, this is a team that kind of goes hand in hand with the Colts and with the Jaguars. Like if they fumble and they're just not what we expect them to be, or in Tim's case, exactly what we expect them to be, especially on the Jag side of the ball, then yeah, the Titans could steal some wins here. Like Tim said, they do have talent on this team. Like low-key, they got talent. And it obviously, like everything else, comes down to Will Levis, right? But it really comes down to coaching. It's hard for me to believe that if you take Derrick Henry off this team and you take Mike Vrabel off this team, that they're still going to be kind of in lockstep. I think it really is going to be a rebuilding year. Obviously, a lot of people would have high praise for Brian Callahan, but it is a tough schedule. On top of that, it's a tough division. Again, if it ends up being that they can steal some games against the Colts and the Jags especially, like Tim said, we saw it week 18 last year. Again, that was Vrabel, though, and he was known for giving the Jags problems. I do think this is going to be more of a rebuilding year, though. I've got them at 4 wins. Um, I feel bad because I think we talked about this. I don't know if I was on camera, if this was pre-show, but I gave the Pats an extra win than I should have. I gave the Broncos an extra win than I should have, and I actually like the Titans roster better than both of those rosters, and I got them at 4 wins. But I don't see it. I don't see it this year unless they're ahead of schedule, unless Will Levis is ahead of schedule, and maybe Brian Callahan's that guy and he can get the most out of this team. And Will Levis, there is a world, but I think that world would involve the Jags falling back, it would involve the Colts falling back, and it would probably involve the Texans at least losing one game to them. So 4-13.
So I do like the Titans this year. I have them where Timmy has them, and I have them at 6-11 this year. I really like their offseason. I think their offseason was something that people didn't talk about. I know people were talking a little bit about Calvin Ridley being a touch overpaid, but they got rid of Mike Vrabel, they got rid of Derrick Henry, and they completely said, okay, we're onto a new regime, we're into a new start. You get an offensive-minded coach in Brian Callahan coming from the Bengals, so you get that Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan tree style. The one thing, they're going to run the ball, but, you have Tajay Spears and you have Tony Pollard. You don't have, like, the most run-heavy offense. It's something that they'll probably address coming next year where they can actually get a dual threat, or they'll get, like, a dual back set kind of. But you got Calvin Ridley. Okonkwo had a solid end to his season. Tyler Boyd, DeAndre Hopkins, if he can stay healthy throughout the season. So Will Levis has weapons, plus you have an offensive-minded head coach. I think this team's going to be a passing team. I think this team's going to be more fun than they have been. The fun part about them was Derrick Henry, and that was that. Like, Derrick Henry, like, who is he going to push over? Who is he going to run through? And then other than that, they were like, eh. I think this team has the potential to be fun, and Will Levis is not afraid to throw it. He kind of has that Phillip Rivers style to him of throwing, but 6-11, frisky team that can give people problems on week to week, so you've got to come to play. I mean, you have to any given Sunday, of course, but they're a team that if you go into the game sleeping a little bit, they can catch you on the day. So
I have
nothing too crazy on them, but 6-11.
I do have a question, and this is just for the sake of argument, just for the sake of discussion here. 6 wins isn't crazy, but I mean, let me give you their first 2 months of the season, and you tell me.
Oh, it's very tough.
I mean, they got the Bears, then the Jets, then the Packers, then the Dolphins. Divisional game with the Colts. They got that at home. But then you go Bills and the Lions, and then finally you get to November before you get the Pats, which is probably their most winnable game outside of the Colts, maybe. And then directly after that Patriots game, you got the Chargers, Vikings, Texans, Commanders. So it does get lighter. Jags. That's where you can maybe seal some is those divisional games, and then obviously Commanders and the Pats. But all the way through, there's tough games for them. And again, this division in general is tough. They could very well be swept by their whole division. I don't think that happens because, as we said, the Colts and especially the Jags are just inconsistent. But I have a hard time getting to 6 wins for these guys.
So I'll give you the 6. I think they split with both the Colts and the Jags. I think they lose both to the Texans. So that's 2. I think they beat the Patriots. That's 3. I think they beat the Vikings 4. I think they beat the Commanders 5. And then I think they have 1 upset win.
The Chargers.
Possibly the Chargers. It could be maybe like a Green Bay team because that is at home. But like they have, I think those are 5, and they have an upset win. So that's where I get to 6. But again, Kyle, you're not like wrong for saying 4. That's absolutely on the table.
I just want to throw out there too. Will Levis, he loves himself some mayonnaise. Dude also loves getting sacked. Dude just loves holding onto the ball and getting sacked. So I have real worries.
Cannot see pressure.
Yeah, he cannot see pressure. So that would just be my worry. And again, you don't have that security blanket of Derrick Henry. I know Tim said that Pollard said he was injured last year, but that is a clear downgrade. And I think it's a very clear downgrade from Vrabel to Callahan. Vrabel earns you I don't know how many wins. That's really it. I mean, like you said, it's the Titans. None of us have them going to the playoffs, but I have a hard time seeing them get past 5 wins.
Fair enough. All right. And now to go to arguably the toughest division in football, which is going to be very interesting to see. We are going to start, of course, with the division winner, Baltimore Ravens. Timmy, what do you think about the Baltimore Ravens season this year?
I think they're going to be a very good football team. They didn't really, if anything, They have gained
Tell
in
them
every spot. It was a very
we got hard hitting
generic,
analysis for
like
you here at the
NPC.
WPP.
Yeah,
That was
my
NPR
bad.
radio.
I was
I think they're
I
going to
was
be a very
looking
good
at
football team.
I was looking at
I
my
think they're
phone
going to
while
be a very
trying to
good
pick a
football
stadium.
team. I am very happy with what the
That's right. I
Baltimore
forgot the word
Ravens did.
expectations
Great
earlier,
team,
so that was way worse.
wonderful team. Anyway, I think they're going to be good. I got no fault in them. I think they probably will be right around where they were last year. They have gotten better. They're getting Mark Andrews back. He's going to be hopefully healthy for the whole season. They get Derrick Henry, who's an upgrade at running back. They did lose a piece or two on defense, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I think they're still very well coached. So I have them winning the division at 12-5. I think this is going to be a great team.
God, do you want to go or you want me to?
Go ahead. I've been batting second, so I'll let you go ahead for this one.
So I don't have the same high hopes as you do for this Ravens team. I think they still make the playoffs. But I do think they did get a little worse, in my opinion. I think they got better offensively. You get Derrick Henry, but I also think that losing Patrick Queen is going to matter. Having that middle of the field matters. It obviously depends. You have Justin Matabuki still. So they have a bunch of pieces still. They're not going to be a bad team by any means. They're going to still be a very formidable opponent for anybody going in. I have them legitimately just one game back at 11-6. So, I think they're still going to be a very good team. I just have a little bit of questions on exactly will that defense be able to play at the same level, and what kind of chip is Lamar coming in with? Well, he got to have a big chip, but is he going to be able to really ascend and continue to be MVP Lamar, which I think he absolutely can be. We'll just see how it goes. But I got the Ravens 11-6 playoff team.
Yeah, it's interesting because Lamar lost 20 pounds. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I did see that.
We've seen him do nothing but progress as a passer. And I'm really interested to see what direction, if any direction at all, when it comes to running the football this year. Obviously, that's a strength of his game. But if you're losing 20 pounds, is that to be quicker in general? Or are you just really planning on just sitting in the pocket and letting Derrick Henry do the job when it comes to the run game? I love the addition of Derrick Henry. I mean, I can't think of any player I would want more in the backfield for Lamar Jackson than Derrick Henry. I think that's going to be a match made in heaven. Like Keenan, I do have questions. You lose Patrick Queen, but more importantly, you lose Mike McDonald, who did wonders with this defense last year. They got bit by the injury bug last year, much like every season, it seems like, with them through this Lamar era, and it just did not matter. So I do think they take a step back on defense. Think, like Keenan said, they might take a step up on offense with Derrick Henry, or they might control the ball even more, which they did a great job last year. But now you add Derrick Henry to that, it's going to be great. They've got a super tough schedule, but listen, they still got John Harbaugh. They're going to find their way to 10 wins. I got them at 10-7. The only two records I had for them was 11-6 and 10-7. I don't see them getting to 12 just because the schedule's so tough. I'll save more for what I think for these other teams because I don't want to give too much away, but I do have them at 10-7. John Harbaugh is just going to continue to succeed. No matter who the DC, no matter who the OC, he's going to find a way to 10-11 wins. The way I praise the Harbaughs, Keenan, we're going to have to find a new name. I'm actually submitted to change my name to Kyle Jordan Harbaugh. So might need a new name for the podcast, but that's what it's going to be. So, but it might get declined. Who knows?
Or can you just get it hyphenated?
Harbaugh Warner. That would be interesting. Kyle Harbaugh.
So
I like the sounds of that. We'll do that.
Thank you.
Be the
I
Warner
appreciate it just for the sake of the pod.
Warner Brothers podcast, and then maybe in parentheses Harbaugh in there with who knows. We'll figure.
Well, I appreciate you thinking about the greater good of this podcast, but. Well, Ravens will definitely be speaking more on when we get to the playoffs. We all have them as a playoff team because they're just one of the best teams in the league.
What kind of
we'll move on to
what kind of season do you guys expect from Lamar, though? What are you expecting this year? Do you think he takes a leap in passing and we get to see more of a 40 touchdown or 35 touchdown passing season from him? Low pick numbers, or do you expect more of the dual threat, less of the dual threat? What do we expect? Or do we expect even a step back?
I think that we're going to get a Lamar that's going to be pretty similar to last year, but I also think that the running is going to be a little choosier, but it's going to be almost more effective because they've finally gotten a running back in the backfield that is worth worrying about. J.K. Dobbins could have been that if he stays healthy. He doesn't. They have Gus Edwards. Obviously, Keaton Mitchell was there for a few weeks, but then he got injured too, and he was really showing to be. So with Lamar losing weight, I think you have a little bit more agility in the pocket. He didn't look obviously slower by any means, but the lightning speed that he had at Louisville, you don't really see all of that in the NFL. You see more explosion, even like in his second year, like that run against the Bengals or the spin move where he's just running. Like you don't see as much of that anymore. I think you're going to see a little bit more of that kind of Lamar passing wise be in the pocket. So I think you're going to get a pretty similar. I think you might get the inflated passing numbers. He was 24 touchdowns last year. You might get to 27. And I think you see running more sparingly but smarter, and it'll be more effective because when he gets in the open field, it's going to be lightning.
Mm.
I agree with that. I think during the playoff game against the Chiefs, we saw there was a clip of OBJ talking to Lamar, and he was just asking him, "Why aren't you running? Like you can see the opening, you're just not taking it." I think he's going to want to run a little bit more. I don't think that's going to hinder his passing. So I think from a passing standpoint, I think he's going to be right on with where he was last year. I think we could just see an uptick, maybe 100 total yards and like a touchdown or two on the season, just a little bit more running. And I think they might even do some more designed runs. Running the read option with Derrick Henry is going to be pretty scary. So let the defense decide who they want to try to tackle.
Listen, I'm not. This isn't a bold prediction, but this is just a thought. You might have a play where Derrick Henry's the quarterback and Lamar's the running back. That's a
Or
legitimate
Lamar's
thing
in the slot, whatever.
or in the slot, like where you might have him on like a jet
Right.
sweep or like the quarterback like kind of drop pass that people that have been doing. Like you might get that, and if that's the case, that offense is going to be fun.
They're going to be an extremely fun offense to watch. I can't wait. I've been waiting to talk about this division all summer, honestly. Like I feel exactly the same way about this division that I felt last year, and this division had Kenny Pickett in it. So I mean, this division is going to be entertaining. Last question about Lamar: do you guys see with this weight loss? Do you see are you worried about an injury risk?
I'm not because I know he's gotten injured a couple times, but for the most part, he's been very good about not taking unnecessary hits. So one like big thing I have about like Josh Allen is he just like looks for too much contact where it's like, God, you are the franchise. Please don't get injured. But like Lamar does a very good job of either getting out of bounds, kind of sliding, or if he's gonna take a hit, it's not a direct hit, or he's kind of already going down and he'll kind of get touched more than he's gonna get popped. So I don't think it's gonna be too much of a concern. And he's quicker, so I think he can get away people easier.
I agree. I have no worries about injury. It's incredibly difficult to predict injury.
And he got injured from the pocket when he got really injured.
Yeah, when he had that knee injury, it was in the pocket. So I don't have any worries about it now.
I'm over here battling the same fly that got at Keenan a couple weeks ago.
It flew all the way to Vermont from Tennessee. It's like we're gone.
Can we
All
talk about the team I'm most excited to talk about in this division? They were second in the division. They were in the playoffs last year, and that's the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, let's. I want to start with the Cleveland Browns. Sorry, Timmy. I'm gonna quickly start on the Cleveland Browns. It's not gonna be long. They are to me the worst team in the division. I have them at 7-10. I think that they're fine. I think that they're cool, but I think their quarterback position is going to be the downfall for them. You've got obviously a healthy Nick Chubb. You've got a defense that has Myles Garrett on it, which is already that gives you 2 wins. He's he's probably now the only defensive player in the league that can get you wins now that Aaron Donald's retired. And him and TJ Watt. But I don't like their quarterback position at all. I don't trust Deshaun. I don't trust anything unless you're trying to tell me Jameis is going to just turn their life around here, which is interesting, but like I don't like their quarterback position at all. I think they're a 7-win team and the worst team in the division.
Timmy.
I definitely, I definitely won't go that far to say that they're the worst team in the division. I think this defense is potentially one of the best teams in the division. If
Oh,
not, it's second. It's not. Um, so I think that's going to keep them in a lot of games. I do worry a little bit about offensive personnel. They don't have Nick Chubb. He's going to be on the pup list for the first 4 weeks at least. I think
mm,
it's more realistic that he's on there for 6 to 8. Uh, I like Jerome Ford. He's solid. Amari Cooper's aging. They traded for Jerry Judy and then paid him. I don't really get that move. I didn't really see enough from Judy to warrant that, so that does confuse me a bit. And then I totally agree. Deshaun is definitely a big question mark. He's nothing that he used to be when he was in Houston, and it just hasn't gelled. To be fair, though, we haven't really seen a lot. He missed a lot of games last year, so I don't think that they're the worst team in this division. I'm going to give them a 9-8 season. I do have them missing the playoffs as well, but not last in the division.
Just a quick comment on Jerry Judy. It's gonna be a music comparison. I don't listen to much Polo G. Like he's definitely for the younger generation. But every time I do hear him, I'm just like, I don't see it. Like I don't get it. That's how I felt about Jerry Judy's entire career. Because I feel like people during his Broncos tenure, people would talk about him like he's in the classes of, like an Amari Cooper or, any of these top receivers, right? Like people just would be like, oh, Jerry Judy's a trade target. And I feel like I'm always left wanting more when I watch him play. Like I just never see these crazy highlights. I never see this consistency. So I just don't get it with Jerry Judy. I actually like him in this situation where there is better receivers and he can kind of fall back, kind of like Stephon Diggs being the number 2 or 3. Um, but completely with you there. I don't get why they paid him. I don't really know what your return is. And I don't think they really know what their return is because we haven't seen just that much
he had a
consistency.
good 5 game stretch at the end of 2022. That was, and they were showing a little bit of what he was at Bama because he was a very talented guy at Bama. But he had like a good 5 to 6 game stretch at the end of 2022, and people were like, "Oh, that's the guy we saw."
Listen, I loved this team last year, not because they were like a hard hitting defense. It's because it was fucking chaotic as could be every single week. You never knew what you were getting from Deshaun. They lost Nick Chubb, I think week 2, week 1, right? Like it was the whole
Two.
week 2.
Yep.
So same as Anthony Richardson. So you got nothing from him, which is a huge part of your offense. And
Mm-hmm.
you got to rely on Deshaun, who is like 4 years past his prime completely. Like they're like that's never Texans Deshaun's never coming back. We did actually finally see some flashes of Texans Deshaun. In the game we saw it, he got injured. We never saw him again. And we wrote this
They
team.
also reworked his deal. I don't know if you
They
guys saw that.
reworked his deal
Okay.
today, and which I'm not really sure what that means. There wasn't
They basically they moved everything from his guaranteed to like a signing
a
bonus. They were
signing
able
bonus.
to do that. So they were able to clear up like 40 something million overall, and like this year they now have like almost 60 in cap space. So they have some of the most cap space in the league because of the way they restructured his deal.
So I'm not sure how true this is, but they cut Tyler Huntley today, and they're saying the reason why they're fielding offers for Jameis is because Deshaun feels threatened because they like Jameis more than him. If that's true, and again, this is why this is my favorite team, is because you could convince me of a 5-12 season for them just because it all the way falls off for the Deshaun. Because if it falls off, it's going to fall the fuck off for this team. But they have so much talent on both sides of the ball, especially defense, especially at home, and they do have a true home field advantage. Um, I have them actually at 9-8. Don't know why. We say all this about Deshaun. Does anybody know his record in games he started last year?
6-1 or 5-1.
5-1. 5-1. I don't know how. I don't know why. But if he is even just slightly better than average, you're gonna get wins out of this team. And especially if Chubb comes back looking like Chubb, we don't know that he suffered a terrible injury, a complete knee reconstruction surgery. That's hard to come back from. But they do have a good stable of backs. Maybe he can be on a pitch count. I don't know. But if they can kind of control the ball and Deshaun can't have some of the uglier games that he had last year, even despite being 5-1, they might just be okay. But if it falls off, it's going to fall all the way the fuck off for this team. And I can't wait to watch it because, I mean, I hope we do get some Jameis Winston starts. All-time chaotic QB. I mean, you want to talk about Eli Manning. That's Eli Manning without the Super Bowl. It's talking about 33 touchdowns, 30 picks, 5,000 yards. I need more Jameis starting QB in my life. So I'm hoping that Deshaun misses a few games. Probably will. And I hope Jameis is still on that team because, man, this team is just entertaining. Even if it is 5-12, it's going to be the most entertaining 5-12 we get. So I'm locked in. I cannot wait to watch every single AFC North game this year. I just want Sunday Ticket or Red Zone just strictly AFC North pass. I could not watch the rest of the season and just be happy watching the AFC North this year. So, and the Browns being at the top of the list just from an entertainment standpoint, because you could tell me any single outcome minus the Super Bowl with this team.
All right. Moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Timmy, you want to start here and talk about Pittsburgh? It looks like you're probably confident in. You love yourself some Russell Wilson.
I'm pretty sure I did this last year. The Steelers are one of the dogs this year. They're going to be a bad football team. That's my take. The preseason, I don't know if you guys choose to pay attention to Steelers preseason games, but hasn't looked very good. Not a lot of promise from either of the quarterbacks.
I think Wilson went 2 for 2.
I think this is Mike Tomlin's first year under 500. They're gonna miss the playoffs. They're gonna be last in their division. I'm pretty sure I did this last year, and it comes back to bite you every year. Can't bet against them, but I'm giving them 6-11. Bad football team.
Okay. So I said that the Browns were going to be the worst team in the division, and you guys were like, "No, they're not going to be the worst team in the division." I have the Steelers 7-10, so they're both 7-10. I just think that they're going to get the tiebreaker over whether it's the division, whether it's whatever, but they're going to sneak out a tiebreaker, and they're going to not be the worst team in the division. I don't love the Steelers team. Again, I don't love their quarterback situation. I think Russell Wilson's solid. I think Justin Fields has some promise, but I also think Justin Fields, if he was going to progress and be something, he would need an offensive-minded head coach. I know he's going to have the confidence from Mike Tomlin. He's a player's coach, so he will have the confidence. I just don't know if he'll have the scheme. And so we'll see if Justin Fields can be a good player this year, be the future for them, if Russell Wilson just completely takes the job and keeps the job or whatnot. They have talent. They're going to be in about every game because they are a well-coached team. They have T.J. Watt. They have a good defense. So they're going to be in, not every game, but they'll be in a lot of games. It's just going to come down to quarterback play. Can we make plays? And a lot of times, like we have seen, they're hit or miss. I think it's not going to be too much different. I think they got a marginally better at the quarterback position. But the way Mason Rudolph played last year towards the end, I think it's going to look probably similar to that from Russell. Because Mason played pretty well. So I think it's going to – I don't know if it's going to be much of an upgrade from how Mason ended the season, which could lead you to wins. But I don't think it'll lead you more to 7.
Look, if Mike Tomlin can get you 9 wins with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph, who might as well be the three of us playing QB, why can't he get there with Russ and Justin Fields? That's the logical question. The case against this team, I've never in my life seen this. You guys peeked at their schedule. They've got all 6 divisional games in the second half of the year. I've never in my life seen that.
They have to go into that stretch 7-3, roughly, or they're not doing a thing. I'm going to read it off, Kyle, real quick, and then you go on with everything you have. They end the season after week 11 with Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincy, Cleveland, Eagles, Baltimore, Kansas City, Cincinnati.
0 wins.
They will get they'll split with Cleveland, and they might split with the Bengals because for some reason, but I mean at that point the Bengals could be humming. So if they don't get to that with 7-8 wins, they're done. And
that's the thing.
Their season's over.
That's the thing. That's why it's so tough. The front of their schedule is pretty easy, and all the games that you would say are a coin flip, aside from the Falcons game, because that's a coin flip, but that's going to be known as the Arthur Smith game, just like the next week's going to be known as the Russell Wilson game because they got the Broncos the next week. Okay. They're catching the Falcons at the right time. They got the Colts in a dome. That's on the road. But all the games you'd consider tough on that front end, Cowboys, they got at home. Jets, they got at home. And then they got the Commanders and they got the Giants on the road. Or actually, they got the Giants at home. But they got the Commanders on the road. That's one of the tougher road games. Raiders on the road. Very winnable games. So they very well could be 7-3. I actually almost expect them to be 7-3. I mean, you're going to have at the least, you're going to have a calm and a consistency at the QB position that they didn't have with Kenny Pickett. I mean, he's terrible. He's absolutely terrible. But Russ isn't much better. I mean, he really is, but I mean, he's very, I don't want to say inconsistent. You just really don't know what you're getting from Russ at this point. But I do expect him to be better than Kenny Pickett. And if he were to get injured, I expect Justin Fields to at least give another dimension to that offense. I say all that to say, I had 3 records written down for them: 7-10, 9-8, and 8-9, and I had nothing bold because I could not come to a decision between 8-9 and 9-8. And I think I do settle on 8-9 because of that back end of the schedule. There is a world, and you keep hearing me say this with all these teams. I give you the downside, I give you the floor of the teams, and I give you the ceiling. Obviously, the ceiling I just said is only 9-8 for this team, so it's almost more probable than not that they end up with 7 wins or 8 wins or even 6 wins. I think they get to 8. But if they go under 500, yes, I know they just gave Tomlin a new contract, but if it ends 7-10, like y'all say, I think this is Tomlin's last season, which would make him the hottest coaching free agent aside from Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick if he's still going to be coaching. But I mean, he's going to be right at the top of the list. And I think if they do go under 500, even if it's 8-9, I think this is his last season there. So very interesting. I can't wait to monitor. Again, this is why this is my favorite division. You just got storylines all over the place, from the Browns to the Steelers to the Ravens, and of course the Bengals we'll be talking about next. But I won't be surprised if they're 9-8. And especially if we do get some injuries to any QB in this division, whether it's Deshaun, whether it's Lamar, whether it's Joe Burrow, man, they're going to be that team that can just up and steal one from you. I mean, they're going to be a top 5 defense, maybe even a top 1 defense. They could be that. And they're a very tough team to play at home, much like Cleveland. But just like Cleveland, we're going to have a lot of questions about their QB position. So it's fascinating to watch. I cannot wait.
Last but not least, we've got the Cincinnati Bengals. Timmy, would you like to start with the Cincinnati Bengals?
Sure. I would like to start out by saying, can we please sign Jamar Chase? Please? For my fantasy football team, can we just please sign Jamar Chase? I get it. He's got 2 years left on his rookie deal, but I'd like him to play a football game week 1.
Oh, he will. He's playing week 1.
I don't know, man. Zach Taylor doesn't seem so confident anymore.
He's playing.
Last week he was like, "Yeah, we'll have him. Don't worry. He'll practice this week." And then practice came, and he didn't practice, and now he's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea." So I'm a little worried.
It's like I have no idea.
I still think they're going to be good. I think they could be good without Jamar Chase. I do. I think they've definitely downgraded at the running back position, but most of the team is still there. So I got them at 11-6, very good football team. Whatever they can do to keep the Steelers at a 6-win team, win both their divisional games with them, sounds good.
So I have them the opposite of you, in the sense of you had the Ravens 12-5 and the Bengals 11-6. I have them 12-5 and the Ravens at 11-6. I think with their schedule, they have the lightest schedule in the division. They start off the season light. The reason why I was high on them last year, and then I ended up putting them in the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl, but I was a little more skeptical the moment Joe Burrow had the calf injury, and it wasn't just because of the calf injury, it was because he wasn't able to practice with the team. This is now the first off season where he's able to practice with the team the entire off season. He had the appendix the year that they went with the Steelers when he threw like 4 picks in the first game. Obviously, he was coming off the leg injury after his first year. It was his rookie season, and then last year with the calf and the hand, after that was mid-season anyway, but the calf really. So he's finally going to have a full preseason and an off season where he's with the team every day and he's able to practice with them. Another guy, and another thing, as I've said, a vibes guy all year. I've been a vibes guy, and listening to him on multiple podcasts and listening to like the reports coming out of it, he seems laser focused. And a little bit, this matters just a hair. The Super Bowl is in Louisiana. I think that matters just a hair to him, with him obviously going to LSU, kind of making his name there. It's something that he even mentioned himself. So I think that matters just a hair. And so I got the Bengals 12-5. I think Joe Burrow has probably his best season yet. And I don't have any worry about Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase, other than when Burrow has been injured, has only played quarterback by Joe Burrow, because he even sat out his next year in college so he could, and then ended up going to the Bengals. So I think if as long as Joe Burrow's there, he's going to be fine. He'll be. I think he's back week 1.
I don't know if Jamar Chase is back week 1. Like Tim said, Zach Taylor does seem a little skeptical now, so you should have worry about week 1. But beyond week 1, no, I don't have worries about Jamar Chase. Matter of fact, I have them, like Tim, I have these guys at 11-6. I have them winning the division. There's easy schedules out there that have tough stretches. This is not one of them. Like, anytime they have a tough game, they might follow it up with another tough game, but it's followed by like 3 cake games. You can make the case, like Keenan said, 12 wins. You could even get to 13 wins, right? It all depends on how you feel about the division. We've made our case for the other teams in the division. My whole entire worry with this team is Joe Burrow's wrist. You talk about vibes, that's great. I agree with you. Like, you're definitely hearing everything you want to hear out of the Bengals side of things. I just have legitimate worries about, and I think Bengals fans, or if you're a Bengals supporter, I think you should have legitimate worries about this wrist injury. It sounds like a one of one. They don't let him practice 3 days in a row. That worries me. So I think, yeah, if he can stay healthy and he plays all 17 games, yeah, they're going to be in the playoffs. They'll probably win the division. They have the easier schedule out of the Ravens, and those two are the cream of the crop. But if he gets injured, we're back where we were last year. And I think I want to say there's a high chance, but I mean, he's now an injury risk the way we probably didn't look at him before. And the fact that this injury is just weird, I don't think we can ignore that. I didn't factor that into my record. I just took it as their schedule, and that's how I got to 11-6. And again, they could very well be a 12 or 13 win team, but this is one of those storylines again that I'm going to be paying attention to this season. His wrist, how they manage him, what's their playbook going to look like. Last year Keenan mentioned the calf. Excuse me. Keenan mentioned the calf, and this was a notoriously hot topic last year on the WBP. How they looked early on, how they threw away the preseason. What would go in Keenan's favor this year is that they took the preseason more seriously. Burrow played a little bit in the preseason. Burrow looked good in the preseason. But it's all going to come down to that risk for me. If they're healthy, like I said, division winner. I think they come out on top as far as them versus the Ravens. And then, we'll get to the playoffs after that. But I am worried that this risk could come back to bite them. And I hope that's not the case. I almost feel like this is their last season as a contender before a bit of a fall off. I feel like they could have some sort of drop off next year. I'm not saying it's their last contending season under Joe Burrow, but I do feel like after this season, you would take a bit of a step back talent wise. You do have to have questions about their defense. They do seem to patch it up no matter what. Their DC always seems to have them at least fundamentally sound and have them ready in the big games. And their offensive line is always going to be a question. So they can't protect Burrow and he gets injured. Obviously, needless to say, the season goes out the window. But that's my biggest question, is his wrist. So, yeah.
Okay.
How do you guys feel about the Slim Shady colored hair?
Joe Shady?
Yeah. Doesn't bother me. Truly, does not bother me at all.
He's trying to blend in with those.
That's
those
something I don't
jerseys.
care about, to be quite honest with you.
I'm surprised, Keenan, because you had strong takes about Tom Brady's hair throughout his career, and then you're quiet on the.
Yeah, no, I did. I hated Tom with the long hair. I truly did. This one doesn't bother me. I don't know why. He just feels locked in to me. Just feels locked in. Truly.
As he should.
I had more of a question mark with his no back suit. But you know what? Shout out to him for that. Shout out to him for his no back suit. But yeah, that's all I've got on this division. I think that it's going to be between the Bengals and Ravens. The Bengals will come out on top of that, and then we'll get to the playoffs and we'll see what's going on.
Any worries from you guys about the wrist?
Me, no.
So it doesn't.
I definitely got.
Go ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
I got a little bit of worry about it. I've definitely said this before. There have been doctors that have said like this specific wrist injury, like Kyle said, it doesn't really happen in the NFL or in even sports very often. But when it does happen to people, they do tend to lose strength in their wrist. Obviously, he's on a different rehab plan than most average Joes are, so maybe they got it back to full strength and whatever. And from what Keenan's saying, he doesn't seem to even talk about it or even acknowledge it as if it's going to be a hindrance towards them. So I do kind of believe in them. So I don't have a lot of worry, but it is definitely in my mind that maybe a re-aggravation could be an issue on like a short week if they have like a quick turnaround. And like you said, they can't practice 3 days in a row. That could definitely be a problem for them. So.
And Keenan, why do you have no worry about this rare wrist injury?
Because it's so rare. To be quite honest with you, I don't. It seems like a fluke, like a fluke kind of injury, and it's like one of those things where I would have to see it linger. I don't know anything about it. It's not an injury that's really common. So like, I just don't have any concern until I see the need for concern. Like until I watch game, like when I watch week 1 and I see him against New England, and if he looks just fine, I don't really like. I'm waiting to see because obviously in the preseason you're not going to unload really much and everything like that. And I haven't heard much out of it. Like you've heard it from doctors, you've heard it from like you think is speculatory kind of things, but you really haven't heard anything out of Cincinnati where it's like other than like the practicing thing. And I don't know exactly why that is. So I'll wait. I'm waiting to see. Just waiting to see. Same with like Rodgers and the Achilles and Kirk with the Achilles. Like you have to naturally be like, what's going on there? But with them, waiting to see, I react. I'm being reactionary and not proactive with the thoughts. Just reactionary.
Okay. All right. Sounds like I'm the most worried about it.
It's not like a wrong worry.
No.
It's so obscure that like it's kind of where like, oh, why did it happen? Could it happen again? And me, I'm on the other side. Like it's so obscure, I don't think it's gonna be. But like we never know. We truly never know.
Yeah, no, I just think it's super interesting with the grip part of it because that's what we saw. Like that's the lasting memory last year is when he went to throw and he couldn't even finish the throwing motion. Like he was in real pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tim says it's common that you lose feeling possibly, like as far as grip goes. And I mean, I don't know. It's just something I'm going to monitor. And
it's something definitely to monitor, and it's interesting.
The storylines go.
I'm reactionary
for sure.
I'm reactionary. Once I see it's a problem, then we'll react to it. That's just really how I'm approaching a lot of injuries this season. Once I see it, I'm gonna worry about it then.
Okay.
Right. Is there anything else that anyone's got on these two divisions? We got through the AFC. Shout out to us.
Through the AFC. And I cannot wait to go through the NFC. This is fun. And I think our NFC shows are going to be super fun. Then we're going to have the playoff show for you and the bold prediction show for you. This is what the Warner Brothers podcast is all about right here. And Tim, I got to say, you've already came through with the takes. You've already came through with the spiciness. So I cannot wait for when we do record. Oh, shit. Keenan, we should have known Keenan was not worried about the wrist injury with them rocking the Burrow jersey. We should have known. But I cannot wait.
I had to keep it under wraps. So here, you see there. You don't see
it's like fully blocked. I had no idea.
You don't see the Burrow. That's fine.
No, I cannot wait for the bold prediction show. I think Tim's going to come through with scorching heat. Camden Dennis levels. Shouts to Camden, by the way, birth of his son.
Yeah, shout out to Cam.
Uh,
Shout out to Cam.
Cannot wait. Absolutely cannot wait.
All right. Well, this was the Warner Brothers podcast. Thank you, Timmy, of course. Thank you, Kyle, of course. We will be back here very shortly talking about the NFC and getting into the NFL season picks, predictions, all of that good stuff that Kyle just alluded to. So appreciate all of you guys, and we will see you very soon.